oh, wow, what could I do with this? What could I do with this? And you can very quickly go down that shiny object path and say, where's this going to be at in 2 years after we implement it? Because to your point, just getting it in and off the ground is one thing, and then understanding the resources you're going to have to invest in the long term to maintain it, to really utilize that functionality at its full force, that's a whole nother animal.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our number one priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the WBS Podcast. I'm Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm Elevate IQ. When it comes to the needs of large enterprises with more than $1 billion in revenue, there are only a few solutions that can meet their needs. These solutions have extremely deep capabilities with their localization and globalization, but they are equally deep in their supply chain planning, transportation management, warehouse management, and project accounting. While most people think of Oracle or SAP as the only potential solution for large companies, Microsoft Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations is one solution that's equally deep and capable. But how does Microsoft Dynamics 365 F&O differs from SAP S/4HANA and Oracle Cloud ERP? In today's episode, we invited a panel of industry experts for a live discussion on LinkedIn to discuss major stories in the ERP and digital transformation space in an objective and independent review of Microsoft Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations capabilities. We covered several grounds, including the depth of SCM and TMS functionality, their deep localization capabilities, and lean HCM capabilities. Finally, we reviewed their unique features such as arrival management during inbound transactions, costing subledgers, and the deeper commitment and allocation capabilities. With that, let's get to the conversation. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. And if you're joining for the first time, this is part of our industry series for which we meet every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. We pick one vendor or a solution that we review independently. We used to cover weekly stories, but we are not going to do any more as part of this show. We are only going to be doing the reviews. For today, we have a very exciting solution, and this is probably going to be one of the largest, which is called Microsoft Dynamics F&O. So we are going to have a lot of fun discussing that. Before we do that, we are going to start with everybody's intros. I am going to start with my intro. If you don't know me, I am Sam Gupta. I am principal at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm. We help our clients with system selection, contract negotiation, ERP implementation. On that note, I am going to move to Phil for his intro.
Hi, Sam. Hi, everybody. Phil Kerper from Ringling Business Solutions. We help executive leadership teams align their digital transformation strategies with their core businesses. I come to you after several decades in the C-suite and mid-market companies, implementing a lot of ERP solutions along the way, and recently an F&O implementation. So happy to be here tonight, Sam. Thanks.
This is going to be so much fun discussing your experience as well. Thank you so much for being here. Dave, can I move to you next for your intro?
Sure. Thanks, Sam. Hi, everybody. My name's Dave Chrysler, and I own an operations consulting company working with manufacturing leaders to help them create the systems needed to grow their business. And I come to you with more than 20 years in the manufacturing space, implementing ERPs and systemizing businesses. So excited to be here, and thanks for having me, Sam.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Dave. Andy, can I ask you to introduce yourself next?
I'd love to, Sam. My name's Andy Pratico. I'm with, I've been involved, with ERP software and manufacturing companies for 4 decades, most all of my life. And in fact, the fact that we're investigating Dynamics F&O, which used to be called AX in the old days, is a coincidence because in 2008, 2009, 2010, I worked with it specifically. So this should be really interesting. Thanks, Sam.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Andy. And if you guys are in the audience and joining for the first time, make sure you post your questions and comments. Our panelists typically review them during the show, and we'll be covering them. If we cannot get to them during the show because of the time, we'll make sure that you receive your answers. On that note, I am going to start with the briefing of Microsoft F&O, and then we can discuss any comments that you guys might have. So if you guys are not familiar with the finance and operations solution, typically when you look at the enterprise space, you are going to have just 2 or 3 options. Especially when we are talking about companies that are going to be probably either closer to $1 billion revenue or more than $1 billion revenue. There are going to be roughly, I don't know how many companies are there. Maybe Phil, you can help me, but my understanding is that it's going to be, just close to 5,000 or probably more. Especially when we look at the US companies. So that is the target market that we are talking about. And when these companies are going to be so big, obviously their needs are going to be very different. Whether you talk
How
about
big was the company you worked with, Phil? You just finished working with?
So that was 3 facilities and 300 plus employees. So it was relatively small for this package. And we can talk about that a little bit. We probably overbought specifically for some of the functionality we wanted.
Yeah, guys. So good commentary there. And we are going to be discussing the pros and cons. There are a lot of companies. I have seen a lot of small companies buying bigger packages as well. Again, there are always going to be pros and cons. And when you need just a very small car because you have a family of 2, I don't see a reason why you would be buying truck. But there are people who buy because maybe they are growing way too aggressively there. They are going to hit $1 billion in revenue in the next 2 years. And that makes it a case that they probably should be considering that because otherwise you need to change it after 2 years. So in the case of Microsoft F&O, it is really designed for those large global companies. The depth of functionality, the depth of workflow that you are going to see in the solution, it's just mind blowing. Okay, you will not see these functional features in a lot of mid-market or these small solutions because it's just too much for them. They just don't need it. Okay, that's the reason why you don't see these feature sets. So the comparable solution for Microsoft Finance and Operations is going to be your SAP S4HANA, Oracle Cloud ERP. There are slightly more focused solutions in the market. Okay, they could be comparable as well because they are going to have probably similar depth, not as diverse probably, because most of these systems are going to assume that you are probably going to be doing a lot of development on top of this because most of the enterprise companies, they are going to be utilizing a lot of different systems in general. Their IT architecture is going to be slightly more complex than your mid-market companies. Number one reason, because obviously they have budget. Also, they have very complex needs. And when you are working with, let's say, 10,000 employees, and they might have their own facilities, sometimes it's very, very, very hard to bring them to just one decision or to one solution. So, your IT landscape is probably going to increase just because of that, organizational structure, because it's very complex. Overall, where these solutions really differentiate is going to be in their global capabilities. So for the most part, if you look at the Oracle Cloud ERP, SAP S4HANA, and the Microsoft Dynamics 365 F&O, you will find that they are probably localized and globalized in 40 plus countries. And that is one of the differentiator. Now, if you compare this with some of the other solutions, for example, we have reviewed solutions such as Odoo or NetSuite. Now, Odoo might claim that I am localized and globalized in 56 countries, and they are, to be honest, okay? But they are not necessarily comparable with Microsoft F&O or SAP S4HANA. And the reason why they are not comparable is they might have depth in the localization and globalization functionality, but they are not going to have depth in terms of their planning capabilities. Okay, that's where the real differentiator is. They are not going to have as much depth in their object structure, the way their objects are going to be aligned overall from the enterprise workflow perspective. The way the business object relationship is going to be across the board, it's going to be very different. Some of the feature sets that you are going to see in these bigger solutions, they just don't exist in those smaller solutions. Okay, so that's the big differentiator. Now, when you compare this solution, Microsoft 365 F&O, with Microsoft Dynamics Business Central, which is slightly more mid-market solution for Microsoft. Now, if you compare the globalization, localization, probably Microsoft Business Central is also localized and globalized. I don't remember the count. Maybe you guys do. But it is also very global solution. I think it's globalized in more than 20 countries, if my recollection is right. So it can support a lot of different countries out of the box as part of one solution. But again, it is not going to have the kind of functional depth that your larger solutions are going to have. What else do we cover more from the briefing perspective that I may have missed? Phil,
Well,
Dave, Andy?
well, the thing about finance and operations, you were just mentioning Business Central. I think finance and operations is a lot more native manufacturing centric. It has a lot of the features already built in versus Business Central will use ISVs.
Well, so in general, if you look at the overall complexity of the solution, Business Central is a very lean solution. You are right that it does not have as deep functional depth in terms of manufacturing. But if you look at the solution design, even for F&O, you are going to see a lot more depth overall in its warehousing functionality, transportation management functionality, and we are going to review all of that. Okay, when you look at their depth in the project management functionality, they have very deep manufacturing capabilities as well. But if you look at their development priorities, the way their solution is designed, they definitely are very well invested in that warehouse transportation management and the project management functionality. And I don't know if that is because of the customer base that they target. Manufacturing is there. It's very, very, very deep in manufacturing. But most of the solutions, if you compare SAP S/4HANA, your Oracle Cloud ERP, they are going to be equally deep in manufacturing. There are certain nuances, the way SAP approaches things. For example, in the case of Microsoft, you are going to see the depth in their transportation and the warehouse management functionality as part of the core solution. SAP might require EWM solution, which is a separate solution, completely different product. The licensing pricing is going to be different, for that solution. The same thing goes with the Oracle product as well. I think the product itself is, deeply capable overall from the ERP perspective. They don't have 5 different products that they are trying to sell, but the way SAP strategy is, they are trying to sort of create the best of breed architecture. And when you are a billion-dollar company, you are probably trying to create a best of breed architecture in this space. So we are going to see their capabilities, whether Microsoft really fits in that best of breed architecture strategy or not. And I'm pretty sure Phil is probably going to have a comment there because he has evaluated these solutions. And Phil, do you have anything to share overall in comparing these 3 solutions?
Yeah, I think I'll echo a little bit the manufacturing. If you have complex bills of materials and you really want to have a lot of management of workflows in manufacturing, of labor management, overhead management, a proper standard cost systems, I found F&O had very deep functionality in those types of areas. I thought a little different than what you said. I thought their advanced warehouse without adding an additional licensing piece, and it was a Microsoft product, so it wasn't an add-on third party. We ended up adding that, and here's something I wanted to say why I thought of it. These SaaS solutions, because they're so scalable based on how their licensing works, it kind of draws you into overbuying a little bit. By the time we looked at the functionality we wanted in the warehouse, particularly, and in the facilities we had, there was not a big difference in the cost between F&O and the Business Central product that Microsoft had. Yet when we actually did F&O, and it turned out to be a very good implementation, the user experience and the adoption is where it was challenging, because there was a lot of clicks, there was a lot of things you could do with it that weren't necessarily value add for the business or for the users. So the cautionary tale is, you can afford a lot of ERP with these licensing models, and maybe you don't need it, but then you got to live with a lot of functionality you might not use. My final comment is, between the three, between S4HANA, between Oracle Cloud and F&O, I found that S4HANA drove you harder towards standard processes. They made it almost difficult to not use their standard processes. Oracle was kind of in the middle in my experience, where that you had really good standard processes, but it wasn't too horrible if you wanted to tweak them, especially for facilities that were in different countries and different locations. Microsoft, I found, was most customizable. As a matter of fact, the SI we used almost helped us modify the software to our business processes versus the other way around. Pros and cons to that in change management, but if you want more flexibility, I thought this was a really good platform. If you want more standardization, I found S4HANA to be a little bit more naturally standardized, or almost forced you to standardize.
Okay, amazing. So just to be clear, Phil, so you mentioned that you ended up utilizing a separate warehouse product, add-on product for the Microsoft.
No, then I misspoke. We had to add an additional advanced warehouse function from Microsoft in order to get the functionality in the warehouse that we wanted. So it was still a Microsoft product, but it was an upgrade to the core F&O package that we were proposed. And we found that in discovery, that what we wanted to do with slotting and license plating and different ways that we were handling cartonization and things like that, that we had to add their advanced warehouse module to the core product, but they were both Microsoft products.
Very interesting. So I don't know the product that we are going to look at today. So obviously the way F&O product is structured, they structure the way SAP would structure or Oracle would structure, from the product perspective. Sometimes you are looking at multiple products and they are simply integrated. So the warehouse capabilities that I could see in the feature list, and that's all part of the training documentation, because in the case of Microsoft, you are going to find a lot of these documentation openly. Other vendors don't open it up. So I could find the training for the warehouse functionality, but in that, they have very, very, very deep warehouse functions. So I don't know if that is the product that you are talking about that is sold as head-on from the license perspective. So,
yeah, I think that's and this is where all of these get you. Andy, I'm sure, has a ton of stories on this. They all of a sudden you're talking about advanced warehouse module, and you see an additional line of licensing on there, and it's very difficult. They don't give you that clean list of what's in that advanced and what's in the out of box in the core F&O until you get in there and you really say, here's what we have to be doing in our various DCs.
It's so difficult. It's so difficult. There's so, with every system, there's so much the ERP vendors don't want you to know or not to clarify, and they just want to, twist their mustache and say, trust me. So completely understand, Phil. Did you also investigate Business Central or just F&O?
Yeah, we did, and as a matter of fact, it was the multiple countries. Although if we would have dug deeper on that, Sam, you were probably right. We probably would have been okay with Business Central, but it was the advanced warehouse functionality that was just naturally more affordable of F&O by the time we compared the dollars and cents of it.
Yeah, so I guess, if you went for F&O, so Andy is going to be right, not for F&O, I mean Business Central. If you actually went for Business Central, then Andy is right that it is going to struggle with the deep manufacturing because it does not really have that capability. So you are probably going to require an add-on. So in the Microsoft portfolio, you have a very lean distribution product, or you have a very deep, comprehensive product. So that's probably the challenge in the Microsoft ecosystem if you are sticking with that.
And the licensing fees, because we were mid-market and we didn't have that many full-time user equivalents, that it kind of sucks you into overbuying, as I said, because it's not that much more expensive to get a lot more ERP capability, and then it will be the last ERP you buy. if it once it's installed, because the thing can go. It is a you're taking a jet airplane for a spin around a small airport. There's no doubt about it.
Exactly, guys. Any other comments before I move on? Okay, I am not hearing. So here, let's look at the localization. And this is where, as I mentioned, when you are looking at the bigger solution, this is where the real differentiator is, to be honest. And when you are looking at these solutions, my personal recommendation always is going to be that you should be looking at SAP S4HANA, Oracle Cloud ERP, Microsoft Dynamics F&O when you are probably present in more than 10 countries, or in a country where the localization does not exist in some of the other mid-market solutions. Okay, so when you look at the functional depth, you are probably not going to use all of this. Okay, sometimes it's going to be just over bloated overall. If you are, let's say, not a $1 billion organization, right, or more than $1 billion organization, it's going to feel very over bloated. You will never use all of that functionality, and the workflows could be very complex, or adoption issues are going to be there, as Phil pointed out. So there are two cases where this product will be a great fit. Either you are localized or globalized and close to either 10 or more than 10 countries, or you are localized or globalized in a country where your other solutions are not going to support you. For example, here, I don't know, we have, for example, China, Brazil, Mexico, all the big ones are here in this list, but you might not see these if you are going to review, for example, Info Cloud Suite Industrial or Epicor or any other solutions that are going to be slightly more mid-market driven, because they are going to be, let's say, localized or globalized in 10 countries, maybe 15 countries. And they typically go after the countries that are going to be where they sell most. Okay, that's how most of the companies like to think. Okay, I am attacking the customer that are most likely going to be present in the US as well as in Japan. So I am going to have localization for 5 countries. Okay, it's going to be US, Canada, UK, because I am trying to target the biggest markets. And then I'm probably going to be targeting Germany, and then probably I'm going to throw in Japan, because everybody sort of have an offshore in Japan because of the automotive market. So this is how most companies like to think. Now, when you are going to be super global company, maybe you are in 200 different countries, then obviously your needs are going to be very different overall, from the financial control perspective, from the localization, globalization perspective. So that's where the real differentiator is of these larger solutions. So here they are saying financial reporting requirements for various countries, as we have discussed, that's where the real differentiator is going to be. Now, they have been very clear. Okay, not every mid-market solution, especially if you're talking to smaller vendors and if they are known for aggressive sales, they are not going to be as crystal clear in stating their position, where they are right fit and where they are not. In this case, Microsoft is being very fair. Okay, the way they are writing, because obviously they don't want to be legally challenged. Uh, so here they are saying Microsoft Dynamics 365 Finance do not support all the statutory or regulatory requirements in a specific country, especially those specifics for states, provinces, municipalities, or certain industries and verticals. Guys, now when you are looking at the regulatory requirements, sometimes you are going to have the federal requirements in specific countries, but then you are also going to have very, very, very specific need of provinces, because they might have their own laws in the way they operate. So if you're operating in that country, sometimes you need to comply with that, and they could have completely different financial workflow. And you need to make sure that the solution that you are buying, especially if you are trying to keep everything in one database, if you are a $1 billion organization, probably you want to do that. Otherwise, you won't know what is happening with your company. Again, when you get into the specifics of these regulatory requirements, they get really, really deep. And that's why if you actually look at a lot of different companies, they like to go for SAP S4HANA, because again, that is supposed to be most regulated, most, financially sophisticated solution. Because for operations, you can use another solution. You can probably integrate with the core SAP S4HANA for the finance. So that's why a lot of companies like to, the bigger ones, okay, they like to use SAP for the financial core, but then they are integrating with the other solutions for the operational lead. The other things that you are going to notice, some of the feature set that you are not going to find in the mid-market solution. For example, let's say if you look at the global inventory accounting add-in. Now let's read this and let's analyze what it is trying to say when it comes to this feature set. So it says, lets you perform inventory account using multiple costing ledgers, so you can comply with multiple accounting standards and internal management accounting at the same time. This is especially useful for international organization because they might have the specific regulations in those countries, and that's why you need to have multiple ledgers. You need to evaluate your inventory as per the laws in that specific country, and then finally you are going to be rolling up, and that could be a very challenging process. Anything related to inventory is probably going to be challenging. Now, there's no way you are going to find this functionality in your mid-market solution. They are not designed for that. So if you need something like this, then okay, you should go for the bigger ones. Now, things such as soft reservation for inventory visibility add-in. Now, when it comes to the commitment, the encumbrance in the budgeting process, when you are looking at the reservations, sometimes I've seen processes where you need to commit before it hits your warehouse, it hits your dock. So the whole process for the reservations becomes very, very, very complex when you are dealing with a very large organization, because once your size becomes bigger, everybody is sort of fighting for that inventory. Okay, and stealing the inventory is a very common process inside the companies. Okay, and it's very, very, very hard to get that centralized view of the inventory. So when you are trying to get that, when you are going to be an organization that is going to have $1 billion revenue, your biggest pain always is going to be inventory. So that's where the solutions such as Microsoft Dynamics F&O is going to shine, because they have a lot of different ways of making sure everybody has the product that they are trying to sell, they are trying to purchase. That's where these solutions really shine. Any comments, guys?
I just want to add on that inventory, and it's this bullet point, the second bullet point, but even a little broader, that with supply chains that are coming from China or from overseas, and especially if you're taking title to the inventory at the dock or on the boat in that overseas location, and if you have an allocation process, different customer groups, this functionality is really important. And you're exactly right. The legacy systems, if they have anything close to that, are probably highly customized in order to get that type of functionality. And the mid-market ERPs, it's hard to see that they're going to get you there. If that's really what you're trying to do, is connect that supply chain with active demand from your customer base. Very important one.
Could not agree more. And most mid-market organization, again, depending upon how large the mid-market organization is, to be honest, Phil, most of them are extremely poor in general with their planning capabilities. They just don't have that planning maturity yet. And obviously, the challenges that they might be experiencing overall from the growth perspective is because just they don't have these streamlined processes to be able to plan. But if you get really sophisticated in planning, these systems can do wonders for you. This is where these functionality, these capabilities are going to be really important. But most companies can't even utilize what is offered by your mid-market solution. They really struggle with how to create decent bonds or the SKU numbering scheme. In general, that's my experience. I don't know what you guys have seen. Okay, so the other functional points that we have is, for example, rebate management. And this is something I have not seen in any other ERP system. Microsoft F&O has very specific capabilities around that. And obviously, that's a very interesting piece of functionality. And when I look at these things, that's where I sort of make the judgment that, okay, rebate management is going to be very common in your distribution-centric organization. That's why they are sort of prioritizing. So if you look at the trend, the theme, the way solution is designed, the way their development priorities are, you will see that it's very distribution focused. It's very retail focused as well. The other things that you have, and again, supply chain, obviously, Phil, as you pointed out. The other thing that we have is the landed cost. I mean, they have real depth in the way they are capturing the landed cost. You are not going to find this kind of depth in other mid-market solutions. For example, here they are saying more control over put away work for goods in transit orders, improves the landed cost modules ability to track the arrival dates is something I found very unique. I have not seen that anywhere else, and that's why it is interesting for me, because there's a new piece of functionality that I have not seen, and I don't know how many companies really utilize that, to be honest. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if anybody is utilizing that. But that is something I found very unique that they are really. Then the pricing, pricing, I sort of, they are describing that they have really deep pricing, but when I looked at the screen, they were okay, but we need to see how the omni-channel experience is working. In fact, when I look at their commerce solution, it was very lean overall. So I don't know how deep they are overall in their omni-channel capabilities, as well as the HCM capabilities. For example, if you go for SAP has SuccessFactors, which competes with your Workday that is designed to be your enterprise grade HCM offering. Oracle also has very deep HCM offering. It's going to be slightly more legacy. They used to rule the HCM space, but with the new players now they are not able to rule, but they still have very deep capabilities overall in HCM. Microsoft, I could not see. I don't know how deep they are overall, but I could not see that.
I don't think they have the deep HCM that I saw. But also another point is, remember, SuccessFactors was a purchase by SAP. So even though, and I don't think it's that mature, so there might still be integration there that you have to do, even though it's being called SAP.
Exactly. I mean, but that is integrated, right? I mean, at least on papers, they are claiming that it's integrated. I don't know how integrated that is, but for SAP, they have always struggled with the integration of these solutions that they have in their portfolio.
Yeah, you can say the same thing about Concur and the other things that SAP recently has started with their acquisitions. Their I'm forgetting the name, not Ariba. What's their supply chain portal?
For SAP EWM?
Yeah. So those are acquisitions, right, in the last several years. So
Exactly. But again, from SAP's perspective, they are trying to create the best of breed architecture. In case of Microsoft, that is all going to be part of one solution. Now, sometimes those could be different products as well, depending upon how they are positioned. So obviously, you need to pay attention to the SKU. Pay attention to the SKU on your contract. That's where the truth lies. Okay, you are not going to get straight answer from your vendor. That is clear. Okay, especially if you're going with the vendors that are going to be really aggressive in these sales strategies, then it's very hard to find answers. They have all the techniques to be able to brush it off. Okay, so make sure you are going really deep and you are reading between the lines when you are talking to these vendors. So now let's pay attention to some of the other functional capabilities that I personally found very unique in case of Microsoft F&O. So I have already mentioned the in the case of inventory management, you have the arrival overview. Fascinating for me. I have not seen that in the other mid-market solutions so far. Work with quarantine orders. That's probably there. Inventory blocking, another very interesting piece of functionality that I have not seen in the other mid-market solution, unless they are going to be designed for the food and beverage sector. In that, you are going to probably require that because you don't want to, let's say, if the inventory is not supposed to be consumed in the process, then you sort of need to be blocking that. So you have a process flow for that. Typically, you are going to have very custom process add-on or some sort of add-on that is going to be doing that. But the solution or the workflow is not really built as part of the system itself. Then you have the create a new warehouse layout. And now this is where we are getting into, and Phil, I don't know if this is part of their warehouse product, but the way I am reading it, I have never seen this functionality as part of the ERP solution itself. Typically, what ERP vendors are going to say, you know what, if you're looking for any sort of zones, regions, anything related to location, go to your warehouse vendor because they are typically far superior overall in managing the warehouse functionality. They are going to have KPIs that ERP should not even care, to be honest. When you are measuring the effectiveness of your, how effective your racks are inside the warehouse, how your slotting is, KPI related to square footage, ASRS system integration, all of that must reside inside an enterprise grade warehouse system. That's how most vendors are going to position. But again, you run into those integration challenges. So if it is pre-integrated, you are lucky. If you are not, then you are looking at $500,000 million to be able to integrate that.
Well, I've seen some of the public product roadmaps on these, and they may be talking about future AI, where they're actually allowing you to create a future warehouse layout and drop your data in there and optimize it before you make the changes. Those are in these enterprise systems. Those are, I don't know if they're available, but they show up on the product roadmaps. So I've yet to see in these three anyways, I've yet to see functionality in the core ERP that does that allows you to create and test a new warehouse and see what the efficiency gains would be.
Exactly. Great point there. So the other point that I have on the deck is going to be related to manufacturing in general. They have very deep manufacturing. You might see some of this functionality in the stronger mid-market solution. For example, you might see this is probably in Epicor Kinetic. You are definitely going to see this probably in Infor Cloud Suite Industrial, Infor LN. But when you look at things like activity-based subcontracting, the water is a little deep there. I don't know if these manufacturing solutions are going to support that. So you have very interesting feature set here overall. But again, depending upon how much you want to utilize, are you going to be able to utilize this? And for that, obviously, your processes need to be streamlined, your data need to be streamlined for these things to work. They sound fancy on paper, but again, how receptive your team is and how much you can really utilize. We have, visual scheduling for lean manufacturing. In the stronger manufacturing solutions, you probably will find that. But again, this has a lot overall in terms of capabilities. Now, when you look at the outbound processes, and this is the supply chain, here they are saying reserve the same batch for a sales organization. Very interesting piece of functionality. I have not seen that in the other solution. So again, if you are doing any of that, then you probably are going to be looking at much bigger solution. They have both the process and the discrete manufacturing built as part of the same solution, and it's not going to be just I build the formula and then you're good to go. It doesn't work that way. The food industries, they are going to have very different processes. The way they release the production order, the way they treat their batches as the batches are actually moving on the production floor. It's a very different process, right? So you need to have that functionality built. A lot of mid-market solutions, what they are going to do, hey, you know what? I can do bomb. I'm going to add a bunch of percentages, and that's it. You are good for the food manufacturing. No, sorry, food manufacturing does not work that way. Okay, so if you require the food manufacturing functionality, you need to go for a solution that is really designed for that. So we have the batch attributes, batch balancing, catch weight, again, very food centric functionality, agriculture centric functionality. Copying a formula is, again, you are not going to find all of these feature sets in very small solutions, because when you are copying the whole formula or BOM, and if you have 2,000 different dependencies as part of that BOM, it's a very massive workload that the database has to do, and it's sometimes very, very difficult. So smaller ERP systems might not have these things. Let's look at some more functionality that we saw in case of F&O. Transportation management, I'm blown away based on their capabilities for transportation management. I have always been fascinated by, okay, which ERP system can really work in the 3PL space? Okay, do you really? Because 3PL is extremely, extremely tricky. Okay, I have seen multi-million failures for 3PL, and they try to create their own ERP. It's so complex that they all failed because of that. So I'm always blown away. Okay, which ERP system can do that? Microsoft F&O does seem to have very deep transportation management functionality. It's going to have the consolidation planning overall, the way your loads are going to be structured. It seems to be built as part of the solution itself, so that you don't have to buy another TMS solution. I saw that in case of your Oracle as well. But again, how successful they are overall in the TMS functionality, I have personally not seen that. If you guys have seen that, please comment.
I have not. They're not really mentioning yard management. I have seen some of the enterprise systems when you get to their advanced warehouse modules to have yard management included as well. And here they're kind of limiting just to transportation, unless it's in transportation management, it's not called by that term.
So honestly speaking, Phil, when you look at the yard management, sometimes you can probably decouple that functionality. You can easily buy add-on because it's not as integrated with your operational core. Because the kind of things that you need to do, sure, it's gonna impact your scheduling. You still need to keep that in mind, but still, it's not going to be as integrated as when you are literally trying to create your shipment for your truck. And if you are very deep in your 3PL capabilities, for example, let's say if you're a transportation company and scheduling on time is your bread and butter, it gets really, really tricky. And that's where, I mean, yard management, sure, even if that is being managed manually, okay, but how about my dispatch functionality? Dispatch is going to be the heart of the business. If you cannot figure out your dispatch, you are going to have challenges. And this is where I see a lot of details here, the way they can do the transportation management. Honestly speaking, I'm just blown away by their transportation management functionality.
Yeah, it's very strong, no doubt about it.
Yeah. Okay. I don't see anything specific that I need to discuss here, but overall, I'm just blown away with the transportation management functionality. The other observation I have is when we look at the asset leasing. Asset leasing is very, very deep as well. I'm pretty sure SAP S for HANA is going to have that. You are probably going to find in some mid-market solution But when you look at the core, sorry, Phil, you have a comment?
No, I'm good.
Okay, so when you look at the core globalization and the localization functionality, because the most mid-market companies, if you have, let's say, one or two entities, you don't really have the asset leasing functionality as part of your operation core. You don't really deal with that, so you don't really need that functionality. But when you are bigger, when you have 200 different entries, obviously you are going to be requiring that. You can probably keep this as separate. Most of the time companies are going to be keeping this in the spreadsheet as well, but if you have that part of the solution, obviously your consolidation process is going to be far faster. So here they have the asset leasing setup, configure asset leasing parameter group, the record right of use asset depreciation, then reverse posted lease transaction. Oh my goodness, I'm just blown away overall. Set up a subsidiary legal entity for consolidation. So they have very deep consolidation and the multi-entity capabilities. This is where the water is really deep overall in the multi-entity capabilities. A lot of companies are going to claim, every solution out there is going to claim, hey, you know what? I can do multi-entity. They don't even understand what multi-entity is, to be honest. Okay. So when you look at the real operation of a company that is going to have $1 billion or more than that in revenue, they have very different needs overall when they look at the consolidation and the multi-entity functionality. Um, Here, they have some other things such as elimination rules. Again, it's very deep in general with the multi-entity functionality. They have cost accounting ledger. You might not find that in a lot of mid-market systems. You might have inventory ledger. You might have the AP ledger, but cost accounting ledger, they have it separate, which is mind blowing. I don't know how many companies really use that, but that seems fascinating for me in general. um, Overhead is going to be one of the biggest pain point if you are going to have those many entities, and that's where the allocation, the calculation is going to be really, really deep. What else? The public sector, they have really, really deep functionality for the public sector as well, guys. And public sector accounting is completely different. Okay, so in the case of public sector, you need to have the fund accounting, the ground accounting, grant accounting, the program accounting, budgeting. It's all very, very, very different. And Microsoft is very deep because obviously that's their target market overall from the Microsoft 365 perspective. And then obviously they want to target public sector a lot. So both Business Central as well as your Microsoft F&O, both of them are very strong in the public sector.
Hey Sam, what is the forecast position distribution? I don't think I've heard that term before, but I don't do much work in the public sector on that previous screen. Is that on the grant process side of things? Are you familiar with
Interesting
that?
comment. And when Dave comments, I need to take a pause to be able to think. And that's why I was really fascinated about this one as well, to be honest, because I have never seen that before. And I don't know if you guys have any sort of experience in this, but my understanding of this is going to be, no, I'm not going to comment. I just don't know.
Yeah, I
Uh,
was just curious because I've not seen that that phrase previously, so something to look into. Thanks.
yeah, I don't know if it is going to be the position that they have and they are trying to distribute across different entities. That could be one. I don't know. That could, yeah. They have very complicated allocation rules in general in public sector. They have very deep dimensions the way they do their accounting. But yeah, you're right. I have never seen that before. Phil, Andy, any comments there by any chance?
I'm looking it up.
Okay, good job.
And the definition that's on Dynamics page that comes up Google, I could read to you, but it really didn't tell me much.
Yeah.
So it's doing something with the financial dimension tabs and forecasting. So
That
it's
would
some
be my understanding
functionality
as
that's
well.
making forecasting easier. Is what it reads like.
Yeah, it's going to be related to some sort of allocation, some sort of overhead allocation, something along those lines. So now let's look at the planning. Now planning is where the water is really deep, guys. Okay, in when you look at these larger systems, and I am seeing terms that I have never seen before in any other systems. For example, when you look at generate a constrained plan, Some stronger manufacturing systems probably can do that, but again, when you look at things like handle delays, okay, you are looking at create a material plan for co-products, okay, you are looking at trace explosion, okay, you are looking at plan for site and warehouse coverage. And Dave, if you are going to be asking any questions, I'm probably not going to have answers for you because I have seen these terms for the first time myself. I don't know how many companies use it, but look at the depth of the functionality is what I am trying to communicate. That it's just mind blowing the amount of depth these solutions have overall from the planning perspective. You can do wonders, but most people struggle in creating their bombs. Okay, if you're not able to create your bombs, your planning is never going to work. So what's the point of all this? Okay, now this is the real differentiator of Microsoft. One of the things that they are really trying to promote is the VR AR capabilities for the trading, especially when you look at the industry 4.0 scenarios. I don't know how capable this piece of functionality is. It looks fancy on a piece of paper. I have never personally seen it working in my engagements. If you guys have seen, we can discuss that. Sounds fascinating. If it worked, great. But this is a good piece of functionality that I have not seen with any other solutions in the market.
Yeah, getting people to use that functionality, it is really slick, but by the time the user pulls it up, finds the step, all of that, they typically have just tried to figure it out themselves as far as trying to process something or trying to do a transaction. It's a really good training tool, though. It's a really slick training tool.
Yeah, and honestly speaking, I don't think we are there yet overall in terms of the AI capabilities. AI is not as accurate as we feel, we are. So I think it's going to take some time before you can get the accurate instructions the way it is positioned in the marketing material. And AI relies on your underlying data. If you have your data right, everything is going to work. If you don't have, then you are going to find a lot of issues. So your problem is always going to be, can you get your data in order? Can you get processes in order? Sure, then probably AI is going to work for you. Now, when we look at the manufacturing, I have seen really good integration scenario here that Microsoft has positioned. This is how you would be integrating with an MES system if you have that. If you are a $1 billion organization, most likely you are probably going to have a dedicated MES system. And sometimes companies don't really mention how it is going to be integrated. They have very clearly laid out how the integration is going to work with the MES system. So in most cases, when you are that big, you are probably not going to be utilizing ERP for your reporting. You are going to be integrating with your machines, and the machine is going to be doing the reporting for the ERP. So you are going to have some sort of MES. So I don't know if let's say if you are comparing the bigger solution based on their manufacturing depth, when you are not going to use that, because you are probably going to be using an external system. So you need to figure out your architecture. Again, going back to my comment about the architecture, okay, how much functionality are you going to use of a system? And is that really relevant in your architecture? So you might have very capable system, but if you're not using that as part of your architecture, you can probably buy a better system for the scope of the boundary that you have laid out for your architecture. And you don't have to go for something like this if you don't need it. The other things that I have noticed, finite scheduling you can find in a lot of different mid-market manufacturing systems as well, but this one has that as well. Allocate resources based on capabilities during scheduling. Big problem, huge problem. Automotive, they struggle with this, okay, and they have to integrate Workday, they have to integrate HCM system to be able to pull off this functionality, okay. So they are able to do the allocation of resources based on capabilities. Guys, that's a big deal. For some organizations that rely on these skill set to schedule the operations, it becomes very, 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 very difficult. So again, that's where the water is really deep. When you look at the deep manufacturing capabilities, even the stronger manufacturing systems might not have that.
On that one, Sam, it really is slick. It's exactly what you say. It's extremely deep. The cautionary tale on this is to have that work for your business. It takes real SI investment when you're doing the implementation, and you have to maintain it. You have to have systems on the floor that are maintaining who's who, what's capabilities, what's constraints, and what's throughputs on machines. All that has to be managed over time, which is another thing that a mid-market that might buy into this and say that looks really good, they might get it up and running, but let's see what it's doing in 2 years.
Could not agree more, Phil. Any other comments, guys? Okay, one of the things that I really enjoyed in this one is the deep process manufacturing capabilities. Most systems are not really expressive in how deep they are overall in the process manufacturing capabilities. Microsoft Dynamics F&O is really, really deep there overall in the feature sets. Most of the enterprise systems, as far as my understanding goes, they all are probably going to be even in general. But then the Microsoft Dynamics F&O, again, I think it is very deep operationally. It's not going to be as deep when you are going to be looking at, for example, your Sarbanes-Oxley compliance, the way you are going to be doing the workflow approval that we saw in case of permissions when we were reviewing SAP S4HANA. I don't see any mention of that. Okay, when you are going to be, and Microsoft really struggles overall in terms of the enterprise security, the way your roles are going to be designed. As Phil correctly pointed out, it's a very technical system. Okay, Microsoft is positioned to be a very technical system. And when you have a technical system, it's very, very, very hard to get that business view from the system. So again, when you are buying an ERP, you are buying for your business. You are trying to accomplish something. So even though Microsoft, Oracle, they let you customize the heck out of the system, but maintaining that over time, it's a real nightmare, guys. Okay, when you are going to be hiring one consultant to the next, they will not understand your system. Okay, you need to coach them because they are used to seeing, okay, this menu is supposed to be here. Okay, if I'm seeing that, great. If I'm not, okay, Mr. CEO, can you tell me how you customized, how you placed this, and documenting that is very, very, very hard. And that's where your maintenance dollars are going to be. That's why I always recommend that do not customize. You don't have to customize the software. The less you customize, the easier life you are going to have, the less risk you are going to have for the implementation.
It's just amazing, Sam, the capabilities of these ERP systems, these top 3-4 ERP systems. It's almost too much. It's almost too much, and I think that's the challenge. If you're going to use a good part of that functionality, it is really amazing stuff. But if you're not, you're going to have a lot of things, and it could be clicks. It could be things that your employees are doing in order to do their work that really isn't adding business value for you. So I think buying right is really important. But from experience and just from all three of these, it blows your mind every time you go through them how much capabilities these systems really have.
Well, like you were saying, Phil, once you added in all the ISVs on Business Central, the pricing was not that different with F&O. But I'll bet the implementation and training costs were substantially different. Or were they?
The SI wasn't substantially different, but I think it comes up adoption. I think adoption by the users and by the SMEs and by the business that there's just too much. It's just too much to have to deal with to run the business. And I think Sam said it perfect. Identify what's important for your business. Absolutely. And make sure that that's what you're focused on with your ERP is really, really good advice.
How long did it take you to implement F&O? And how many people were on the team?
All in, it was 16 months. And core team was 8. And then we had another SME group was another 15. And then the different locations. It wasn't. It was a good implementation. It came in close to budget. We pushed it off because we were getting near an end because we were planning a Q3 implementation and we decided to align it with a year end. So that was really the only real push that we had, and that gave us some time for training. But the implementation I thought went fine. We had a fabulous SI, and the outcomes were good. But to Sam's point, it's a lot of ERP for a mid-market company. And so you're going to have to live with being able to maintain it and to keep all those things moving forward.
Yeah. It was a great firsthand account, Phil. I mean, it was interesting to listen to you and to kind of compare and contrast. And, like several of these, it really comes down to understanding your business processes and working through that discovery process when you go into this. Because, even taking a look at the deck, I've not had any firsthand experience with this ERP, but going through the deck, I mean, it was just exciting to kind of see some of that functionality and easy to get into that mindset of, oh wow, what could I do with this? What could I do with this? And you can very quickly go down that shiny object, path and say, where's this going to be at in 2 years after we implement it? Because to your point, just getting it in and off the ground is one thing, and then understanding the resources you're going to have to invest in the long term to maintain it, to really utilize that functionality at its full force. That's a whole nother animal, that I don't think a lot of people consider on the discovery process side of things. So it's great takeaway there.
And we probably had a little easier time. We had a smaller team and a very dedicated team because it wasn't a huge company, whereas if you get that $1 billion company and they got 750, 1,000 plus employees, and now your implementation group is 50, 100, 150 people, that becomes unwieldy in itself. So we are fortunate that it was a pretty dedicated, talented group that were able to implement the project.
What percentage that group that you described, 8 core and then 15 SME, what percentage of their time was invested in the project?
Oh, and we were doing sprints. It was a wonderment they got anything else done on their day jobs.
Really? Eh?
It's very
very. Wow.
Yeah, when the realization phases of these are really intense periods. And they have to be.
A company that size could afford to allocate that much overhead to implement.
Yeah, and it was a burden, and that really led to, I think we set good expectations. We had a fabulous SI, and I also think that it was a very dedicated group of people. So you didn't end up with, even when they got tired, you didn't end up with really having them run out of the ability to execute.
What's a realization phase? Well, do you want to describe for the people who might not be familiar?
Yeah, well, I'm used to different terms. The realization is so there's planning and discovery. I used to call it discovery. These guys now tend to call it workshops. So they're actually aligning the business processes. They're actually creating a test environment, and then realization is really when you get into user testing and validation of the test environment. And then starting to prepare for actually taking that to a production environment. So realization it's a new word for me too. I didn't hear that a year ago, but that's the words they're using now. I think these guys all go to the same training schools, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, they all use, some different methodology. It's all the same process, I guess.
And now change management, you need a change management, person that's running around with a change management book now. I mean, it's crazy.
Okay, guys, so I don't know if you're going to have any other closing comments. I know we are closer to our time. Dave, any closing comments?
No, I think we covered it. It was insightful presentation for me, and I loved getting Phil's kind of firsthand account. I think that always helps to land, and connect the dots between the information that's available that we're able to utilize in these reviews, and kind of firsthand account of what it's really like.
One of the things a lot of people are wondering is that, because Phil kept on saying so many keystrokes, so many functions, so many features, and these, between Business Central and F&O, and you say, well, what do you mean the F&O is designed for bigger companies? What can that possibly be? It breaks it down to, when you, like, for example, doing a simple exercise like creating an order or a quote or a work order or something like that, how many people does it have to go through? When you get smaller systems, and we've evaluated many smaller ones, it's only one person that does it all. One person wears all the hats. In these larger companies, it's departments, and they all get a piece of the pie, and they all have to be putting in their 2 cents to make the transaction valid and correct. And that's the big thing, is how many people does it take to enter these transactions?
All right, guys. So if you don't have any other short closing comments, we need to wrap. We are close to our time now. Okay, guys. So that's it for today. And by the way, if you are looking at the Microsoft F&O, it's an amazing solution. There is no question about that. It's really deep. But make sure that you really need it. Okay, the companies who are going to be closer $2 billion, that's where you are probably going to be needing this. You have the process complexity at that level. That's when you are going to be needing something like this. Otherwise, the layers of hierarchy that you are going to see in the business object, the amount of time it is going to take to set this thing up, and the chances you have in screwing up with the setup. And because of that, you are going to see adoption issues. So make sure you are aware of that. On that note, thank you so much, everybody, for your time. If you joined for the first time, this was part of our industry series, for which we meet every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. We pick one vendor or the solution that we review independently. So make sure you are not going to miss next week's show. We are going to be here. On that note, thanks again, everyone, for your time and insight tonight.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, guys.
I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show, for sharing their knowledge and journey. I always pick up learnings from our guests, and hopefully you learned something new today. If you want to learn more about Andy Pratico, head over to essoft.com. It's ESSOFT.com. If you want to learn more about Dave Chrysler, head over to thechrysler.club. It's THECRYSLER.CLUB. If you want to learn more about Phil Kerper, head over to ringlingbusinesssolutions.com. It's ringlingbusinesssolutions.com. Links and more information will also be available in the show notes. If anything in this podcast resonated with you and your business, you might want to check other related episodes, including the interview with Cristiano Garadini, who discusses the importance of costing granularity and why it is crucial to understand your product's profitability. Also, the interview with Sue Shaw, who shares her insights into how to succeed with large global rollouts for the oil and gas industry. Also, don't forget to subscribe and spread the word among folks with similar backgrounds. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please review and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform or DM me on any social channels. I'll try my best to respond personally and make sure you get help. Thank you, and I hope to catch you on the next episode of the WBS.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.